Welcome to Owen and Beru's BBQ. We are back today, cooking up something special for you. We got something called Krill Spacha. If you haven't seen the latest episode of The Mandalorian, you better watch it before you listen to this episode. Today, we have some chefs in the house. I would say, as always, Nick is, he might be my number one chef, aside from Jay, the owner of Owen and Beru's BBQ, apparently, as I was told, Jay, that yes. You were the owner.
Who said that?
Ralph did on a previous podcast.
Oh my God!
And I myself, my name is Matt. So as always,
did you? I try to think of all the podcasts on the Jane Check where it's independent solar systems. Or galaxies or whatever that are, under the banner of the Republic or whatever, just you have the support of us.
Okay.
But it's your own, you can walk away from the network if you want to. You can become separatist.
Oh, okay. Separatist. Wow. You're don't tempt Nick.
That's our next season. We're gonna have a prequel Owen and Beru season where it's really a trade dispute, like for the whole first half of the season. Really engaging stuff.
Well, depending on how Rise of Skywalker hits Nick, that might actually happen. So
it's true.
But I will say, I think we talked about this like on the chat because Disney Plus has all the Star Wars movies, and I watched Phantom Menace for the first time since I saw it in the theaters 20 years ago. And it's honestly not that bad. I feel like just years of like people crapping on Jar Jar Binks. I was like, you know what? He's no less annoying than C-3PO in the original ones. Maybe a bit more, kid friendly. But my son actually really liked Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah. The plot is solid. The music is solid. I mean, episode 1 is good. It's just the fact that just in everyone's mind, the original trilogy is so good. And they wanted that same feel. And it is there, but it's also, it just had that polished look to it, I think. And then, exactly, and then Jar Jar was annoying, so people just nitpicked it to death. But episode 2, to me, is the only weak link in the original, the prequel trilogy.
Because I watched that 1 second, I had to stop midway through because that whole middle section is just so boring. Oh my God!
There's only one section I will fast forward every single time over, and it's when Anakin and Padme are on her home planet Naboo, and she's like, the little island over there. We'd walk over there and let the sand dry on our skin. Try to guess the names of the birds singing, and I'm like, oh my God, who says this crap? That line drives me up the wall.
And it's just like when you're doing screen testing or whatever, do they have chemistry? Because holy crap, there's just no chemistry. And when they say they love it, it's just like, oh God, it's just so bad.
And I've seen Natalie Portman in other movies. She can have some chemistry with people.
Yes, she's great. And then Hayden Christensen is a great actor outside the trilogy. So you have to blame George Lucas on that one, but I don't know.
Can you name the only movie I've seen him actually do a good job with Shattered Glass? Can you name anything else he's done good in?
Oh, what? Does he have that Jumper?
Jumper, yeah. Jumper's not really acting though.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to turn this into a Ramblecast where I was on IMDb.
Hey, we're still talking Star Wars.
Okay. Well, no, totally in vain. In vain. But once I start pulling out that IMDb to look up people's, then I feel like I'm on a Ramblecast.
I'm sorry, guys.
That's quite all right.
Anyways, I don't own Owen and Beru's. It is you guys are an amazing group of people that put on a fantastic show, and I am happy to sponsor and make this show available to them.
Well, we're glad to have you on board. I know you like Star Wars, and I know you love talking about it. So I'm
excited to be on.
Yeah. We're already halfway through The Mandalorian, though. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's we're in this little golden age right here, or this golden month of having a TV show and a movie coming out. So
I know.
It's interesting where I'm kind of curious because the response has been so positive to The Mandalorian. I think it's well warranted, but it's not without, things you could probably nitpick or be complaining about. But I'm wondering because a lot of times when the thing first comes out in Star Wars, it was like, yes, it's so cool. And then there's somehow at the afterwards, some subset of Star Wars online fandom just starts to be like, well, actually, it's just this, blah, 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 and they hate it. So I'm just curious to see if Mandalorian will have a similar effect. But episode 3 was amazing, and I thought they're gonna like try and cool the jets a little bit because episode 3 was so like action packed. But this is another really enjoyable episode, even though that complaint that not a lot happens, you could probably say that, but still it was an enjoyable story. And again, the Mandalorian as a character and the people that kind of comes across in his journeys it's a compelling story. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think that they did cool it down a little bit this episode. I thought it was the weakest of the 4. I still enjoyed it a lot. I mean, I'm not crapping on it. Don't want to pull a Ralph.
You said chit. You said chit. Chit.
Yeah, they had chitlins.
That's it's a Star Wars term too.
It is.
Ichuta. But yeah, exactly. I thought plot wise, not much happened. I thought the cuteness of Baby Yoda is what made this episode phenomenal. Is that you have like 4 good scenes of Baby Yoda, and you're like, oh, that's all I need. I don't.
Him sipping the broth. This thing has been meme worthy since the beginning. But man, there's just been so many good ones with him sipping the broth.
Sipping the broth almost overshadows what is probably the funniest one for any parent or non-parent, which is the button pushing.
The very beginning, yeah,
yes,
absolutely,
yeah.
Okay, so the button pushing one, I just have to mention a personal story. When I was a kid, my dad had this pickup truck which had 2 gas tanks. I know it's weird, a left gas tank and a right gas tank.
Yeah, Fords did that. Yeah.
So I'm a kid or what have you. And
it was back when MPGs were like 7.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we would be driving along, and I'm 4 years old. I just push buttons, and so all of a sudden I'm just pushing the gas tank button. Yeah. He wouldn't have the whole thing filled on both sides. It was just all of a sudden he would be losing power because there was no gas, and so I completely related with Baby Yoda in this.
Yeah,
I've been awesome. And my dad being like, "What is going on? Why are we losing?" Oh, okay, I see what you did.
I thought that was sorry, that is a bit of a Ramblecast thing, though. But yeah, exactly. My first truck I ever had was like 85 or 86 Ford. Same thing. I had dual tanks. I think both of them were 14 gallons in each tank. So, but yeah, you usually just fill up one because gas was so cheap back then. You're like, sorry, go ahead.
No, but there is something about old cars where, I used to have a very good friend of mine. He had this old 80s BMW, and we called it Episode 4 just because the whole control panel and everything was just so like New Hope, where you just have these like, little lights and all these little buttons and crap like that. So, I do enjoy it, and I know Nick hates the post episode 7 stuff, but I feel like what they've done well is like capture at least the feel of what the original trilogy had, and that's the one thing that only really bugged me about the prequel trilogy. It just didn't have that feel of like being in the Star Wars universe, which was like this dirty, very lived in space.
Yeah, well, like me and Matt briefly touched on this before we hit record, but I mean, I just didn't like episode 7 because I felt it was a copy of A New Hope, which episode 1 is too in a way, but it still felt like Star Wars. I've always said that it does. It sticks to the George Lucas structure of 6 little stories tied together. Whereas in The Last Jedi does not, is 3 arcs that are, and it feels more like a traditional movie instead of a Star Wars film. And that's where, to me, it felt very foreign.
That's Rain Johnson. Oh, that's SOB.
Look, I'm just saying for pacing and the way it was, it just didn't feel like Star Wars.
I don't care. Luke, throw away that lightsaber. You go.
You be your own Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. Screw you, Dad, Anakin.
Well, speaking of things that copy things from the past, this episode's plot, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So we also talked about this, Seventh Samurai, which Magnificent Seven pulled the same plot. And it's been done again and again. Nick, you wanted to mention a very famous Western movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely saw the Magnificent Seven, but there's 7 of them. So I went with the other copy, which was the Three Amigos. That's what I felt. I was like, this is a Three Amigos because you have You have the people coming in, same as in the last so like 7. You have the people coming in, robbing them. You have to hire the hired guns to save them.
Mhm.
Like, and then the training of the village people with the sticks. It's like So like to me, it's like all you need is an El Guapo, which you don't really have. You do see him, but he doesn't get his justice in the end. So
I always figured he was in the actual ATST.
He might have been, but we'll never know.
Yeah, we won't.
So like, to me, there's parts that I think are maybe the main takeaways from this, which was his kind of connection with, and I'm blanking on her name, whatever
O'Mara.
The actress?
O'Mara. I don't know, just the character's name is O'Mara.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's a connection there, and that might be something that's more significant down the road. And then the shock trooper, or what's her name?
Cara Dane.
Dune.
Yeah.
Dune. Okay.
Yeah.
Like and I thought that was really interesting, kind of going into like what happened after the fall of the Empire. Like that thing is really interesting to me. So
yeah,
it was just kind of like little nuggets of like deeper things in this episode that kind of was just a bit of a replay of Seven Samurai.
I agree. Like I always like those little nuggets as well. It helps you understand little things because exactly like what happens to the rebel troopers once the war's over, and she's like, "Oh, we became security, we became protectors." Just like, and I didn't sign up for that. It's like, yeah, it makes total sense.
And it's interesting to maybe even to think about these two aspects. Like you have a plot that's like everybody knows this plot. Like we can all get it behind this plot, like small village being overrun by a bully. And then you have these little nuggets for the Star Wars fans. So you can kind of like bridge the gap between like those geeks out there that are like, oh, that was a loaf cat. We're going to get something from Rebels, and those casual Star Wars fans that are just like, Baby Yoda messed with a cat, alien cat. like give me the action, those Klatooinian raiders, which these.
That was the one thing that I, from the get-go, that's one of the first things you see, I kind of went, it's like I just wanted to go, the time of the orc is here. Because that's what I felt it was. It was just like, did they stop by the Lord of the Rings set and steal all their armor for a second?
That would be some cost reduction, so that makes sense for reuse.
Cost reduction. Also, apparently there was a boom mic in this episode. So and
really,
and a Starbucks cup somewhere.
But it's part of me is like, okay, if they want to do this for a long time, they're probably just putting little bits and pieces. But I really do hope that they are planning, obviously this has been successful and they probably want to do more of it, that we can actually get to spend more time in something that's more in depth into kind of the post Empire falling mythology. Because it seems like such a rich collection of stories that I would love to see. That reminds me of the Kathleen Kennedy things. Like, what's so difficult because there's not a bunch of comic books and things to kind of reference for Star Wars, and then people are like, see all the extended you decanonized.
Yeah, no kidding. Like tons of novels, and and there's parts of me that are like, if they reference one of those things from those novels, like I'm both like happy and also like betrayed. I'm like, what? You could have just used this plot.
Right? Or all they're gonna say is just like, don't say the whole thing making it uncanon, because like you get comic books, like they just redo themselves over and over again anyway. So just like it's your source material. Like I just, to me that one still is just kind of like a head scratcher. Where Disney I think did a really good job with Marvel, just letting Kevin. Maybe they were just lucky to have Kevin Feige that kind of just took it and was able to kind of make it, because the actual Marvel executives seem to be kind of clueless to how to operate it. But maybe it's just Star Wars hasn't had that kind of guiding figure that really gets it. Is shepherding it well.
I would say Dave Filoni is that person who helmed Rebels. He was part of Clone Wars. So, he was basically George Lucas's Star Wars son, we can call him, and he really does have the knowledge, and he has the fans behind him.
And he's a great guy.
Is he in a position of power with him coming back and doing? Maybe I'm just not as in tune with
So he was still there when Lucas still had control. He did the Clone Wars, he did Rebels, and Kathleen Kennedy has even admitted that now everything she consults with him first.
He
so
definitely
instead of consulting him, why isn't he running it? I guess
he should be. I mean, I think Kathleen Kennedy, though, as soon as this trilogy is done, like she probably may have a year or two, and then will step down or retire. I mean, she's been producing and been for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not to knock Kathleen Kennedy. I mean,
right.
Look at her resume. It's amazing. I just rewatched E.T. this weekend because that commercial was so amazing.
Yes.
I was like, I'm going to watch E.T. again too. And it's like, yeah, Kathleen Kennedy produced it. I mean, it just has her long list of amazing films. So it's not to discount her contributions, but I just think clearly if she's the one at the helm of the Star Wars thing, that she hasn't really quite been in tune with kind of meeting what the totality of fans want, where Marvel is also taking chances and driving things forward. Like the end game plot is kind of on just spec and script. It's kind of ridiculous, but everybody loved the crap out of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So there's no reason why Star Wars can't do the same thing.
Right.
I think even with the steps with the Mandalorian, the fact that Dave Filoni was involved with, he was the director of the first episode,
mm-hmm.
and clearly he has his fingerprints in a lot of this stuff. I only assume that he created the Lothcat, although I know there are 1,000 artists that are behind him. But I do feel like he has a voice in this show, so I am excited moving forward, because if we even look at the Clone Wars and Rebels, that first season of both of those shows were a little wonky, and didn't appeal to all of the Star Wars fans. But boy, by the time you got to season 2 and season 3 of those shows, it really started to brew like a good krill spacha,
So what's your count on how many times you can drop krill spacha?
I don't know, but I did want to mention that all of the people of Sorgan, or this village that we see, that are raising these krill, right? That it opens on that peaceful scene of the krill. They're kind of a neon blue.
Yeah.
And their clothing actually has that blue in it. So it's very nice, interwoven world building here. We can only assume that they dyed, they used the dye from the krill to make their blue, on their outfits. So and then the village that the Mandalorian walks into, or that little, I guess it's not a
outpost or something.
Yeah, they actually are serving up some of the spacha that I assume that they trade with those villagers to get. So there's just some nice interwoven world building on such a small planet.
If I can just do a bit of nitpicking on just something from this episode,
please do.
Is you would think if this person was, in the Rebel Alliance and everything, she would clearly know how to get rid of a chicken walker and ATST. It's if the Ewoks could do it with logs and rocks and crap like that, clearly we know how to beat these things. How did she not reference anything? What we need to do is just set some tree logs over here and we're rolling down the hill, and then it'll get and flip over.
And she was involved with the post Endor.
Right, exactly. Battle of Endor should be one of those things in the history books,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's well, let me pull out my Ewok manual here.
I think you're failing to ask the real question, though. Is you're in a backwater planet where hardly any people live. How the heck did an ATST get there in the first place?
Good question.
It is a good question.
Yeah.
But maybe, who the hell knows? Yeah. I mean, maybe it is kind of post-Soviet Union falling, and then so all their weapons, they're just selling kind of on black market and stuff like that. I'm sure it's something similar with all those Empire weapons and weapons of war or whatever.
And the Lego set, which is the only Mandalorian Lego set that's out there on the market right now, is the ATST. Has some really cool kind of different paint jobs on the legs and what have you. So it definitely feels like they've taken it over. I mean, it's got red eyes. That was something kind of.
I just assumed that was internal lighting.
Oh,
yeah, same here.
If you ever had a military flashlight when you were a kid, you had the blue lens, the red lens, because a red lens it doesn't affect your night vision, so you can. So I figured that was a red, so you could see at night.
And they can develop photography in there too.
That too, yeah. That's what the co-pilot does. It's kind of useless.
So it's in a dark room. It's just mainly so you don't, overexpose your paper, your film.
Yeah. So they're taking pictures of the krill or the squids that land, and this dark. Anyway, I'm mixing my Watchmen with my.
That's what I say. The squids. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Also, we get some cool stuff from the Mandalorian, though, as far as we get to see his tracking vision, which I thought was kind of like a little nice. It's like we
shot a predator.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the footprints, it comes in later. We see him tracking Cara Dune at the beginning, but then we also see him using it to track down these Klatooinian.
No, it's cool. Yeah, Klatooinian. Yeah, that's what I've written down. Yeah. No, I just think it's because we've seen that twice now, and it makes total sense because he is a bounty hunter to have this type of predatory technology. Because you see it, was it episode 2? Yeah, where he's using his gun. He can see thermal through the wall. And so it's like, oh, that's like Predator. And this one now he's seeing the leftover heat from her footprints. You're like, oh, okay, but Predator did that as well. So you're like, oh, okay. I think it's neat, but it makes sense.
So I've never watched the Clone Wars, but with the whole him not taking the helmet off thing, is that something that is post the Clone Wars that they've kind of adopted? I assume if that's the case, that since they were kind of all hunted or whatever, this is their way to kind of protect their identities or something like that. But I didn't.
We did discuss this, I think, last episode. At least I know I did.
We'll go ahead and refresh Jay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So there are many different clans of Mandalorians out there, and my guess is the clan that he in is probably what's remnants of Death Watch, which Death Watch in the Clone Wars is this clan of Puritan Mandalorians that believe everything literally, and like they're honorable and they're to the death and all this, and they're that way. They don't take their helmets off ever. Whereas in Rebels you have a Sabine, who is a Mandalorian as well, who does take her helmet off frequently.
And she's in a different clan, and you get to see her clan, who also they take their helmets off. So
just maybe a different sect. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I kind of liken it to, you have different, Christians that believe in different,
right.
Like,
exactly.
That makes sense.
So, or he's in a cult. So,
or it's just like,
or he just
the whole showing who Jango and Boba Fett thing was just kind of made the character kind of lame. Let's just
maybe his face is messed up. Maybe he's like the Mountain in Game of Thrones, and he can't take it off.
What's he? I mean, it's the same guy who played Oberyn Martell, and he was a pretty hot.
He is missing his eyes, like he's just.
Spoiler alert.
So you think we're going to see him actually? Like we're going to see the character by the end of the season?
I guarantee you by the end of the season.
And that's got to be a reveal on the last episode.
Yeah,
they're setting that up.
But I do kind of get like not showing his face because it's like Vader too. It's like Vader's this like total badass, 7 foot tall, just intimidating presence, and then you see like the back of his head and it's like just a disfigured curly, and then like it's just kind of this old pasty white dude is like, oh, okay, well, that's not that. Okay, it's kind of lame. So like I do, there is something to the original stars that did well. It's just like not giving too much away, like telling midichlorians, like I kind of enjoy just to kind of get more inside baseball kind of stuff, but it does take a bit away of the kind of mystery of makes it special.
I agree. It's just, that's what I love about the mid 70s to mid 80s movie period is that, the Wampa, you just see the arm, and that's it. So you have so much in your brain going, what is this thing? And then later on they add it in. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's like, Jaws too, right? The first Jaws movie, or Jaws as well, where, they just didn't have the money and the thing didn't work right. So they had, and your own imagination fills in far more menacing a presence than probably, any technology could do.
It's like the interrogation scene in A New Hope when that probe ball comes in with the shot, and you're just like, oh, like we don't get to see what they do to her, but you can only imagine that
that scene is probably only second to the escape from the Death Star, with the whole TIE fighters, pacing of that, the shot of that is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. But I love that scene because you see the music of that, the violence, then just the fact that you see the needle come down, you see Vader look, you see her look at the fear, and then the door just, and then immediately pans over to just the trooper walking away. I mean, that is one of the greatest little editing shots, I think, of the entire film. I mean, of all
Shout out to Cliff Armstrong and his profession, man.
It is.
New Hope was saved through editing.
Yeah.
And George Lucas's
wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Jay, because you're talking about nitpicking. Like, if you want to hear my nitpicking, and it's just because it's me being a cheap person, was the Mandalorian is being very generous with his money. He gives her a lot of money, the waitress, the bartender at the place, for the broth. Then he gives her some extra money, and he says, "Hey, watch the kid." And clearly she didn't watch the kid. He's there with the soup watching him, which we all love because it was a cute scene. But I would immediately begin like, "Hey, I told you to watch the kid. Give me my money back."
Okay, I took it to mean that like when he paid her, he was trying to get more information about Cara Dune.
He was,
and she didn't pick up on it because she's such a backwater. I mean, this is a backwater world. I don't think she gets that many tip-offs or payoffs, right? Like, because immediately after, like, he gives her all of this extra money, she's like, "Oh, I'll throw in some extra stuff," and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think she actually picked up on it.
That's true, but I'm saying, but the second time though, he gives her more money and he says, "Watch after the kid." Yeah. And then what do we see 2 seconds later? The kid's outside. So clearly, she's the worst babysitter ever. So I want my money back.
Lay off. I mean, she's got a lot of tables, and that kid, him, he pushes a lot of buttons.
He does.
I mean, he's wearing like $1 billion in whatever their currency is. So maybe it's just like Tim. He doesn't care about, 10 cents or whatever. Lady.
Yes.
I mean, you can't cash in his armor, but anyway.
You know what we can cash in on? We can cash in on a commercial break right now.
Nice.
Thanks. So anyway, I did want to point out that this episode was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. I know.
Yeah.
So second female director, not only in a row, but for Star Wars. So way to finally get with the program. and that familial connection to Solo, since her dad.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I know she did it because I remember, like, in that celebration video, I think they had, they showed her and the other directors and stuff like that, like bringing them in or whatever. So, no, I thought she did a good job. Again, the story itself was kind of basic, but I thought from a directing standpoint, it was an engaging, like.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't write it. I mean, she didn't take care of that boom mic scene, but whatever.
Is that her fault or is that the editor's fault?
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like
it ultimately lays in the director's hands. So dock and pay.
I'm sure it's edited out of there now. So
it was a very dark shot. I mean, you have to really be paying attention to see that boom mic.
Sure. And really, how would people know? I mean, this is a Star Wars universe. It's just like some metal, in the background. So
I've been in New York since it dropped, so I watched it on my laptop. So it wasn't like the best, like crystal 4K vision like I have at home. So I did not notice it or see it.
I watched it on my phone. So the first time.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
nice. So a couple other things about this episode. We see that droids are clearly like this thing of like they're kind of like the Lyft or the Uber of I mean,
is that it's not R5, it's not, is that an R4?
It kind of looks like an
R6.
No,
I'm not
clear. I thought R3 is
clear. R3 is clear. Yeah, that's why I went no.
It did look like an R4. Just
it looked like the same one that got blasted in the last episode.
Yeah, because there was an R4 driving the little cart in the last chapter. So I just thought it was kind of an interesting.
R4 is the more conical shaped head, so that's not that was. Oh, here we go. I'm looking. I found a. Looks like R6. That's an R6 droid.
Oh, it's an R6. There we go.
Or it looks closer to an R6 by the looks of it.
What else can we point out about this episode? The Klatooinians. Why can't I not say this? Klatooinians. They looked dog-faced. They looked different than their Return of the Jedi, like breed or what have you that was on Jabba's barge. They just looked a little different. So, which is fine. I just was kind of like.
I mean, the latex probably dried out in the 40 years, and, so they had to make some other ones. Yeah, it's the same as like Yoda and the Last Jedi. I thought looked a little fatter in the face than how I remember.
Wait, it's supposed to be the same species as like the warthog dudes?
No.
The guy that puts Luke in the pit, in the Sarlacc pit,
with the
it's supposed to be the same race.
He's wearing the red.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I have that action figure.
Right, and it looks different, right? Like the face looks a lot different.
Maybe you have regional differences, like just like the race of Homo sapiens has a lot of different looks and all the variations, so it could have differences.
I'm not here to judge. I just noticed that they had.
Why are you being such a Klatooinian racist, man? Only one is legitimate in your eyes? Like,
look, I'm just a Nick 2 purist, so...
There was the one thing that we haven't addressed yet that I thought was actually a really interesting question that hasn't been addressed yet is that how is Baby Yoda still being tracked? I mean, not that we know the answer to this, but, right. Clearly everyone had fobs to see the kid, and you would think as an experienced bounty hunter that he would say, "Oh, is there a tracking device in your clothes? Like where is it?"
Well, that's a good point because I mean that does bring up how do they, and the original client basically could only give them he couldn't even other than that tracking device, he couldn't give them much information. So it makes you wonder is there something, an implant or what have you? So.
It has to be connected to his actual DNA or something. That's what I would.
That's what
that tag would never go away. If it's actually hooked up to some type of genetic part of his body.
So how do you stop that from happening?
I don't think you do.
And that's what I mean. What is his plan now? What is the Mandalorian's plan? Because clearly he found a backwater planet and thought this would be good enough, but it wasn't good enough. So he's got to do something. He has to probably return back to Billy D. Williams. Sorry, it's an inside joke for everybody. It's Carl Weathers.
Brief Karga is the character's name.
Right.
But yeah.
Yes, he clearly has to go back to where it is and get him to cancel this signal, to let the Baby Yoda have some kind of chance at living.
In the trailer, we actually saw, or the trailer for The Mandalorian that was released so long ago, we actually saw Death Troopers, which they have not appeared yet in this series. I can only imagine that there will be some other kind of showdown with the Empire dealing with this Baby Yoda. So, I mean, it does bring up the hitman that we see, or the assassin that kind of comes in, or the bounty hunter at the very end, which again, really lucky that all of these people that are about to kill you, just end up dead.
I was there's something that Game of Thrones is programmed in my head. I was oh damn, they're gonna kill him off this soon, and then oh no, this is Disney. That's not gonna happen. Disney. There's that moment. It was oh damn.
Can you imagine the backlash if all of a sudden Baby Yoda died? Oh God!
But I mean, what I did enjoy about it though is yes, Disney, so that probably wouldn't happen. But since it's a new story and we don't know how it ends, and obviously we don't see a Baby Yoda yet in the episode 7, 8. Maybe he shows up in 9. Who knows? But it could happen. I mean, he could die, right? They all died in Rogue One, so.
My thought too.
I'm sorry.
My thought too was because I kept thinking that season 1 was going to focus on just this bounty or this story, and that maybe perhaps season 2 would move on to something else with the love affair that the entire nation and world now has with Baby Yoda. If they did do that, if this season ends with Baby Yoda bye-bye, see you later, we're going our separate ways, how would Disney rectify that. I mean, there's, like, well, we got to go back to Baby Yoda. We got to get more of that
Baby Yoda gets his own series, man.
Like Muppet Babies.
Yeah. Well, my theory is, and I know maybe it's like a theory that's out there, that obviously Snoke is some type of like kind of aborted clone of Baby Yoda, and that's why the First Order, or this new First Order, was so obsessed with getting him and having that Camino cloner, kind of wanting to pull that genetics. So maybe he's pulling that genetic whatever. And that's how Snoke is so powerful in the Force, because he's just some type of like genetic kind of like half-baked recreation of whatever Yoda species is, with maybe a human or something, and that's why he's so powerful. Go ahead.
Listen, I got Ralph good. That was Ralph's theory last week. He was talking about.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Well, not totally, but like he was talking about like how like maybe like he's like the 10th version of this, some kind of clone. I was like, oh, so they're doing the alien resurrection plot, where it's just like we just keep copying, ripping,
right? Because I mean, he's like maybe like a hat. He's definitely that. It isn't like in the tubes or whatever in that movie. Like there's like that kind of crappy human hybrid. It kind of works there.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Dark Empire series, comic series that came out post Return of the Jedi. It was one of the, there was 2 storylines that came out. 10 years after we had not 10 years after Return of the Jedi, but it was about 10 years after, near the 10-year anniversary, right? 89, 91, somewhere in that range. I guess it was 91. Mm. We had Heir to the Empire, which led eventually to a clone of Luke, and in the last book of that series. And then we also had the Dark Empire series, which had clones of the Emperor. The Emperor had a cloning facility where he was cloning his own body and then transferring his essence into these clones in order to live. So my thought about the midichlorians, and this kind of relates to, I may have mentioned watching Resistance, which
yeah, you said you weren't a fan.
I'm not a fan, but they have brought up in Star Wars Resistance these kids that are kind of on the run from the First Order, and the fact that the First Order has been stealing kids for a long time, perhaps getting Force sensitive kids to take their midichlorians maybe for some nefarious purpose, whether it's for the Emperor or for Snoke. So I could definitely see this tying in loosely without drawing big overarching bows too. So I don't know. I do wonder how they'll rectify this if this Baby Yoda will always be hunted. I mean, I can't imagine, like, what are we going to get, season 9 of this show where they're still on the run? It's like it
worked for The Fugitive, right? The TV show, so
and the Hulk. So
yeah, that too. Yeah,
like the end of every show is him like walking down the highway.
I don't know. I think that we shouldn't see Baby Yoda except for a few episodes maybe in the future after this first season. Like I could see, someone saying, "Oh, I can now that the tracking has been disabled or whatever." We know people. You don't have to show Luke, or you don't have to show whoever, but like you could be like, "Hey, we know people who can help him with his powers," and like basically saying that we're going to give him to the new Jedi Order, or it could be anything, or we could just put him in seclusion, and then like. Like season 4 or something like that of The Mandalorian, you see like a teenage, like almost like a teenage Groot now,
Well, yeah, because I mean, since he's 50 and he's like a toddler, him probably actually getting to the point where he's, of an adult or a young adult is going to be well past the Force Awakens trilogy. So, True. Like, and that could be something that kind of picks up after whatever happens in Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the end of like the episodes, like the teenage Baby Yoda coming out, like. Don't worry, Ray. I got it from here.
Would he say it in proper English though? Is the speech learned, or is it inherited?
My God!
Yeah, right. That's the
nurture versus
feel like
nature.
The speech is learned. I don't know, but it would be. But yeah, but then he just gives like a really cheesy thumbs up. Yeah.
Like a G.I. Joe episode.
Yeah, right. Cue the cheesy Top Gun music or whatever. Just like,
So, what do you think? What do you make of the music that we're getting so far, Jay? As a music aficionado, are you enjoying the soundtrack?
I like it. It's a little bit plug and play. Like I feel like he's kind of come up with like 5 themes that he kind of just repeats. So it's not like a John Williams score, even what Michael Giacchino did with the Lost TV series, where it's like live new compositions every single episode that tie in directly with what's happening. To me, it's more copy and paste, kind of his main themes, and kind of just plug it in there. Which there's nothing wrong with it. I really like the music. It kind of ties into that Ennio Morricone, Western spaghetti Western kind of feel, which is probably what they're going for, but also tying into like more John Williams romantic type scores that he's influenced by. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I like that we're getting basically a new. How they're doing the soundtrack is that as the episode is released, a new score is released for that episode. So they're unique, individual. And there's not going to be like a end of the season like you get the whole season. So
I will say that while I do enjoy it, the Trent Reznor Atticus Ross score to Watchmen is better, but this is very good. It's not bad by any means.
To touch down on that Watchmen aspect, because we talked about this right before we recorded, and I made the correlation between the two properties. You have Watchmen and you have The Mandalorian, both pulling from previous source material, that existed essentially in the 80s, right? So, and one is basically taking stories that are kind of, Westerns, and just kind of wrapping it in that dressing of Star Wars. And then you have Watchmen.
But I think there's something to say about, that's sticking to what Star Wars is, which is kind of like rehashed, serials from, Flash Gordon or whatever.
Yeah, based on mythology. Yeah, classic mythology.
Yeah, and Watchmen, the original comic, was very much about what was the pressing things of the day, like very topical to like, the fear of nuclear annihilation, but from the context of like comic book heroes, where, now it's okay. What's a pressing topic of the day, white supremacy and that climate, but it's still through the perspective of superheroes, people that wear costumes.
Yeah.
I feel like both are kind of true to the original core of what they were. But I do appreciate probably Watchmen more in that it does feel like it's pushing that story forward more. But it doesn't discount that Mandalorian's a very like satisfying and enjoyable show. Yes. And like episode 3 to me was just like so freaking good. Where, just like, I had tears, and then there's just that moment where all the other Mandalorians show up. I was like, yeah! Like I was just watching it by myself in my house on my couch, and I was like, yeah! For nobody but just myself. Like, yeah! Like that feeling's great. And I think that's something that Star Wars at its best is when it's like getting you to be like, yeah! That's
very true. And The Mandalorian is obviously something that I can watch with my kids, my family.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit down and, hey kids, let's watch Watchmen. Guess what happens to this character at the end? Spoiler alert, there's a hammer. So, it always pushes, and Watchmen, even with the original 12 issues, there's some really gritty stuff that happens in those issues that pushes you to really think, and really be like, rocks you to your core. Whereas, like you said, the Star Wars or the Mandalorian, like there is those feel good moments, whether it's Baby Yoda pushing buttons or Mandalorians coming, arriving to save the day. So, well, great. Any other thoughts about this episode before we wrap up here?
Yeah, the kid. I know it was a bit part, but couldn't we have found a better the woman's kid?
Yeah,
the daughter. I know it was a bit role, but couldn't we have found a better actor?
I thought he was fine. What was wrong with the
just kidding. I'm just messing.
Trying to be Jack on this? I know he was hurt that I didn't invite him.
No, I'm just kidding. He did overact a little bit. Like, he's so cute. Everyone was thinking that, but
But hold on, isn't like everybody in the world like he's so cute? I feel like it's an honest reaction.
Yeah, I thought that was probably like the one thing. Like all the kids show up and they're just gushing over Baby Yoda. I was like, finally, this is the audience.
I feel bad. I didn't listen to the episode my wife was on, but like I don't know if she did it several times with you guys because she says it every 5 seconds when we're watching the show. You're like, Baby Yoda's so cute. It is.
You would have laughed, Jay. She did say cute. I know at least once. He's so cute. Yeah, but what made us laugh as hosts is because we're so used to the Ramblecast and this format of just speak when you want to speak. And Kyle, you'd see in our little windows here, she'd just be like. She's raising a hand, everyone out there too, so she wants her proper turn to speak. You're like, you're so polite, you're so sweet, Collie.
The broadcasters, I guess, are a lot more civilized than
they are the lightsaber
Ramblecasters.
they are.
Yeah, you guys are Hans blasters.
Oh yeah, whoever shoots first gets it out. And what do you think of the McClunky? Since we have you on the show, we can talk about a little bit more other Star Wars news. The McClunky ad to A New Hope. Have you seen that part?
Oh yeah. So here's the thing. I have the despecialized editions, and that's what I watch, and I just live in a world where I just enjoy the originals, and I don't have to worry about the countless things added and revised to the. But I did. That actually brings up a better thing that I also wanted to ask because there is the ongoing debate of like viewing order, like if you're showing somebody it for the first time, and I think most of us have landed in that. Was it the Machete edit or the I think it's the guy who came up with its name, but like episodes 4, 5, then 1, 2, 3, and then everything after. But
I think who was it? Probably was Boston that said that. Like now, like you can even go like Rogue One, 4, 5, then do episode 3 only, then go to 6. Just skip 1 and 2 altogether because they're really not that important to the overall plot.
But then I think we're talking about it, and I thought the same thing, but I was like, after watching Phantom Menace again, I was like, I thought it was actually, even though sure it doesn't tie in directly to the Skywalker saga so much, I was like, I thought it deserves to be seen. I don't think it deserves just to be completely omitted from. So I saw another one where it's just called the Time Machine viewing, which is you watch the original trilogy, if you can get the despecialized editions on HD or some type of DVD version. So you watch the original trilogy. Then you watch 1, 2, 3. Then you watch whatever the current special edition 4, 5, 6. Then the whatever. So that way you experience it as it was, and then the prequels actually support the original, and then you can watch the specialized editions that where all those add-ons make sense because George Lucas tried to shoehorn in everything in the prequels to the original series.
Sure, like the ending of Jedi.
Yeah, like so. Yeah. If you do the Machete order, but use the despecialized ones, the end of Return of the Jedi just won't make sense. Because like, who's this like weird Artie Shah or whatever his name is? That's not Anakin Skywalker. But if you do the originals despecialized, so you experience it, then 1, 2, 3, then bring in the special editions, then it makes a more cohesive story. It's a really long way to go about it, but I thought it was interesting as the never-ending argument of how to watch the series goes on. I thought it was an interesting kind of new angle to take with watching Star Wars.
Yeah, no, that's I like that. In other Star Wars news, I also wanted to mention the Billy D. Williams. I mean, we've talked about him on the show a lot in reference.
Well, he's been great on Mandalorian, according to Boston.
According to Boston, but he's been great in the news recently with the fact that he came out as identifying as gender fluid, which for a man of his age to be that open and to I mean, he has nothing to gain by saying this.
I thought he meant that as the character. I didn't realize he said it himself. Oh, because
to me, like, and that's where I kind of like anybody that fucking. So sorry, damn it. Anybody that smooth as a human, like I just feel like is generally a more fluid individual anyway. Like that's why I always kind of thought Lando, it just made sense that he's down to clown with anybody. It doesn't matter what species of alien or whatever they are. Like, it's like Lando doesn't care. Like Lando's going to be good with whomever. Like, so to me, it doesn't really seem like that out of left field. And even that's like Lando is Billy D. Where Billy D is also just like just a really smooth dude or a smooth person that can kind of be with whomever. I don't like that. To me, I never really. It makes sense. So cool for him for coming out with that or whatever.
Yeah. Even when I was a kid, I always thought when Han shows up at Bespin, and he says, "You got a lot of guts coming here after what you pulled." I always wondered what that really meant. That's what I thought. I was like, man, it's like if Billy D's shunning him, then Han really messed up.
Well, and sadly, we're never going to get a Solo 2.
We might.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
It's not like we've kind of talked about. Yeah. I think if they, what they are doing with the Obi-Wan series, if they do like a 10-part or whatever part Obi-Wan series, I think it'd be neat to have in some of those characters because it's going to be in the same time frame, hopefully. Sure. That you could throw in some Han on Tatooine. You could throw in some all that.
And there's rumors about a Darth Maul series.
I don't know if that would work.
I feel like just tie it into the Obi-Wan series, or if they do go into Han Solo, because that seemed like what they were setting up anyway with the Han Solo movie. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's how they do it. Maybe that they continue that Han Solo story through the Darth Maul series or whatever.
I don't know if any series based around a Sith character could work because all you would see is just nothing but betrayal and just constantly, because the Force Unleashed video game, which also they made into a comic book as well, it does a very good job of showing that, like what it's like to be an apprentice and how you're trying to please your master and how it doesn't matter what you do, the master is always looking out for themselves, and is going to throw you under the bus every time. And it's like, I just think that would be really depressing if they made a Darth Maul. Because, Darth Maul is, what's that god, that always rolls the boulder up the hill. I mean, that's, that's what he is. I mean, he will fail every time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially with the characters that he runs into. And his ultimate demise.
It is a tragic story, when you get into it, for sure.
Yeah. My hope was that they would always do a sequel to Solo, but just call it Lando and have Lando have his own, and then tell the story of Solo through Lando, because everybody loved, the casting of.
Absolutely. Yeah, Donald Glover's Lando.
He did great. Yeah.
He did a fantastic job.
Yeah. Because we talked about that, I've forgotten what we talked about, but we talked about there's so many things left to do with Lando and Han, and and we could even show that that's what it was. How did Han dump his cargo at the first sighting of an Imperial ship? You could easily say Lando is doing some shady stuff just to screw over Han to get his ship back or whatnot, and he's making Han look bad in front of everything he's doing. I mean, because they're both scoundrels. So, that could be an interesting twist that Lando's behind all this to make Han be miserable. There's a lot of story left to go if they wanted to.
And no, totally. I'm with you on that. Well, I don't want this krill spacha to too unwell in anybody's stomachs, so we'll keep it under an hour here. And I keep asking you guys for any last thoughts, and we keep getting derailed. But at this point, though, I think it's worth noting that we are recording this on Cyber Monday, but there's still plenty of time to put in your orders, and using our Amazon affiliate link through Amazon.com/JandJack, or go over to Patreon at patreon.com/JandJack. Become a patron member at $1 or more. My goal, and this December is really tricky because there's so much Star Wars and so much family time, and schedules being what they are. So we will do our best on getting these shows out to everyone. But my goal or my hope was to actually have a live show for our last Mandalorian episode to cover, much in the same way as we're doing for Watchmen. So we'll see. We'll keep you posted on that, but that will be a Patreon level supported podcast. And let's see. At this time, I think it's a good time to thank our patrons that make this possible. I know Jay still thinks that Tack lives in Tokyo, but he actually is from Tatooine.
I like the alliteration. I just like the alliteration of Tokyo better.
And I like the alliteration of Tack from Tokyo. Eckhart from the Empire, Ed the Imperial Letter Carrier, Maggie the Mandalorian, Joanne with the stolen Death Star plans, and Drake, you're the Death Star today. How much we care. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for making this podcast happen, as well as we thank all of our patrons for making this show possible. And check out some of the other Jay and Jack podcasts out there. I guess Jay, our owner, our leader extraordinaire, will be on some of those. But check out the Ramblecast, of course, the broadcast, and I guess Jack's on some shows too. So
a couple. Yeah.
Just a couple. So
Jay has fobs on all of us.
We can't get too far away from him.
That sounds about right.
All right, great show, guys. One in a krill.
Nice.
See ya.
Bye.